Former President Donald Trump has been wounded in what the FBI is calling an assassination attempt. Trump was addressing a campaign rally in Pennsylvania when the shots were fired. Let's take a look at what happened. You can hear shots ringing out there and security personnel shouting at the former president to get down. Soon after they confirmed that the coast was clear, they brought a bloodied Trump back up to his feet to lead him away. When he did this, raising his fist in the air, shouting the word fight. And that evoked a surge of cheers from his supporters, as you can see. And now Secret Service has said they have killed the suspected shooter. The FBI is identifying him as a 20-year-old man from Pennsylvania. And those images of Donald Trump being carried away, of course, making quite the rounds all over. Now, in a statement on Trump's social media platform, Truth Social, he thanked the United States Secret Service for their rapid response. Trump has said, "I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong. I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet dripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening." And for more on that story, I'm now joined by DW correspondent Janelle Dumalaon in Washington, D.C. She's been following this developing story for us. Janelle, we now know that they have shared more details about the shooter. What can you tell us?
Yes, Nisha. Now, German media laws, of course, prevent us from releasing the name of the still suspected gunman, but we know that he's 20 years old. He's from Bethel Park. That is a suburb in western Pennsylvania. That's about an hour away from Butler, Pennsylvania, which is, of course, where this rally took place. He is a registered Republican, thought to have no prior criminal record. Now, he didn't have any ID on him at the time that he was killed by a counter sniper, but he was identified using biometric data and DNA records. Now, the FBI, in its statement, did not offer much more in the way of detail. Rather, it reminded the public again that this is an active investigation, and that if anyone in the public knows anything or has seen anything, then they should come forward. Now that he has been identified, of course, the investigation is quickly zeroing in on what his motive might have been. No one from the investigative side has said anything yet in that regard, but there are a few open questions, like whether he might have been working with anyone else. Was this a lone wolf attack? Are there more threats more perceived threats emanating from this attack? So they're all open questions at the moment, but for this particular moment, they have now released a name.
But what also stands out is how close this gunman got. An eyewitness has told the BBC he could clearly see the gunman with the rifle before the shots were fired. Let's take a listen to that eyewitness.
Bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle.
A rifle.
We could clearly see him with a rifle, absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, "Hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle." And the police are like, "Huh, what?" Like they didn't know what was going on. We're like, "Hey, right here on the roof, we can see him from right here. We see him. He's crawling." And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him off the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for, 2-3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
There's going to be a lot of questions about this incident, of course, as a security lapse. We had eyewitnesses saying that they could see the shooter on the rooftop, that they were pointing to him, but security personnel did not react. Have they given any indication of explaining how they could allow this to happen or what their next steps may be?
Indeed. So at a briefing earlier where FBI representatives were present, they were asked at how this could have happened, how the shooter could have gotten that close. They were also asked about that incident you mentioned where some spectators of the rally were trying to get the attention of law enforcement because they saw some suspicious activity on the roof. Now, the FBI representatives did not say much on that. They said that they were investigating at the time several suspicious occurrences. They did not say what that is, but they did say that these were questions that were best reserved for the Secret Service. The Secret Service, of course, being the ones responsible for securing that campaign event and doing all the sweeps and potentially securing that roof where that shooter was thought to have exercised this attack on Donald Trump. But Secret Service was not present at that briefing and thus might be answering questions later.
And while a lot of pressure on all security services, but understandably they're being tight-lipped about it, I want to turn to the political reaction. Now, Janelle, stay with us. We know that President Biden spoke soon after the rally, so let's take a listen to what he had to say.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
I mean, those were some strong and empathetic words from the president, who has otherwise taken on quite an abrasive tone with Donald Trump. So does this indicate a potential softening of the campaign of the Democrats?
You know, Nimisha, before I answer that, a thought just occurs to me that in the last days, everyone has been very preoccupied with this matter of Joe Biden's age and whether he would have the stamina or whether he would be able to survive even 4 more years in the White House. And this incident today has told us that anything can happen at any time. Donald Trump was nearly killed today at a rally. But in terms of your question about the softening of his attacks on Donald Trump, this is clearly the strategy that Joe Biden has decided to adopt for now. His campaign has clearly decided it is not an appropriate tenor to take to attack Trump. As such, they have also pulled their campaign ads off the air. Now, it's just a real contrast from just a few days ago when I was at a Biden rally where he really did go on the offensive. He called Trump unhinged. He reminded his supporters there at that rally that Trump is a convicted felon. But this is not a message that is deemed to be appropriate at this particular time. And what Joe Biden is clearly trying to do at the moment is not steer the pot, to really bring the temperature down in what is a very volatile situation.
Well, we are looking at some dramatic pictures of President Trump being led away by security services personnel, and it definitely looks like it could be quite a defining image for that campaign. But as we have people across the U.S. reacting to this apparent attempt on Donald Trump's life as well, let's take a listen to what they had to say.
I was really surprised, shocked, didn't like it. You know, I'm not really a big fan of Donald Trump, but still I don't like the fact that, you know, our ex-president was shot.
It's pretty shocking, the world we live in. It's like we've gone back to the 1960s. I remember as a kid playing on a playground when John F. Kennedy was shot. Maybe I was 5 or 6. You would hope that the world has progressed to the point that we respect other people.
It feels so scary. I mean, already our democracy feels like it's on a precipice, and it's just, it's unbelievable, but it's believable.
Chanel, we heard somebody there saying they're not a fan of Trump, but they do think that this was abhorrent. But I do want to ask you for the reaction from the fans of Trump, his supporters. We had Donald Trump being led out there saying, fight, fight. What can we expect as a reaction to that call?
Indeed, and you have to ask yourself when he says that, what does he actually mean? Fight what? Fight whom? And I think a sober reading of this might be that perhaps it's not a call to action, perhaps it's a show of strength and defiance in a vulnerable moment. But of course, it only takes one supporter to take it as a call of action, and there is no saying what anyone might be inclined to do. But you make this very good point there, that what Donald Trump says, what his messaging looks like from here on, will be very important in terms of what he tells his supporters to do and how he tells his supporters to behave. We're already starting to see from more official Republican quarters more incendiary messages around how perhaps Joe Biden orchestrated this attempt on Donald Trump's life. Of course, this is a completely baseless claim. We've seen conspiracy theories on social media spread like wildfire, saying that this was a plan orchestrated by the shadowy left. Now, of course, these are ongoing investigations. Agencies are investigating them, but Trump supporters are also notoriously suspicious of institutions. So you can imagine them questioning the investigation every step of the way. So I would just like to go back to this point. What Donald Trump decides to communicate, what he sets as an example for his supporters, will be key in the next days.
Definitely, and those are some frightening and incendiary comments that you just pointed out. And as we heard people reacting on the streets earlier, and one of them also said, our democracy is already on the precipice. We know how divisive this campaign has been. What can we expect from on the road forward? You said that it depends on what Trump says, but how can we expect different quarters to react now?
Now, there are some who want to perhaps see this as a positive opportunity, that this attack on Trump could be a wake-up call, that it could be a way to return society to a more civilized form of discourse. Because as we heard from those voices that we aired earlier, nobody thought this was good. Nobody thought this was a good thing to happen in America. And you did have tweets tweets and messages and statements from both sides of the aisle saying there is no room for political violence in this society. Donald Trump should be able to have a peaceful rally whenever he wants. But again, how the message is managed, especially from the side of Donald Trump, will be very important. Will it be a temperature-lowering message? Will it be a message to unite as a country, to perhaps return that civilized discourse again, or will it be a message of vengeance and anger and suspicion? In an already very, very divided country, I fear that it could go the second way rather than the first, but of course there is always room to hope.
Temperature lowering is the hope then. DW's Janelle Dumarao in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for staying on top of that for us. And now reactions to the shooting are coming in from around the world, with leaders expressing condemnation and offering sympathy. We know that the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has responded to what he called shocking scenes, saying political violence in any form has no place in our societies, and my thoughts are with the victims of this attack. Now, we also know that French President Emmanuel Macron has described this incident as a tragedy for our democracies. From Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky has issued a statement telling of his relief that Trump is now safe and wishing that America emerges stronger from this. We also know that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned what he called an act of political violence, and he has wished Donald Trump a speedy recovery.